and we haven't even discussed anything.
I don't care. We'll press pause. We just experienced an earthquake.
Yes, Jen and I, and like a lot of other people in Pennsylvania and wherever else. Yeah.
I opened up my Facebook to do some checking, and everyone's like, "Was that an earthquake?" Someone said, "I think that was an earthquake. Sadly, no loud noises."
Yeah, on my page there's, okay, we just had an earthquake. Yikes. I was like, my washer is out of control, but it wasn't on. So like unanimously, we all had a very human American experience thinking that our washer and or dryer was going off and creating a house shaking event.
Because that happens so often.
Right? The
Like,
great
Ronnie, yours is in the basement.
Yeah. It is. It is.
Like on resting on concrete.
Yeah. I thought it was very powerful. Fun fact, I wasn't doing laundry either, so
Wait, so I love how anxiety, I'm like prepared for anything to happen when a literal natural disaster which was not a disaster. It was like probably not even a like 1 magnitude earthquake. It was a little shaky shake.
yeah.
Anyway, I love how we're just like, huh.
Well, I mean, I definitely was nervous for a minute. I held my dog until I felt it lessen because he's a small guy and I didn't, who knows what he could get himself into during this 2-second shaking of my house.
Okay. All right. So you responded a bit more. I was like, huh. No glasses on. Look, scanning my surroundings for movement that I wouldn't be able to see.
Yeah, I think because Jonathan woke up startled, I got startled and I was like, oh my gosh, I should be nervous. This isn't just a dryer. And then he was like, maybe it's just construction. And I was like, you know what, you're right. And then I walk in here to start, our podcasting moment with Jen. And she's like, did you feel that? And I was like, did you feel that?
Oh,
and we did.
Wait. This is so funny. So 2 things. I texted Owen. I said, bro, that was an earthquake! Exclamation point, exclamation point. He says back, yeah, YEA. I'm like, okay. And then I'm in a group chat with Owen's, like the girls in his family. And someone just said, you guys feel the quake? Now it's not even an earthquake, it's a quake now.
Oh, we got a little name for it. Maybe these are people who've quaked before, like this is their first quake.
I wish that's something really lame. Are we in Quaker Town?
We're pretty damn close. Well, some of us are. Well, close enough.
Close enough.
Yeah. So
I did the IFS chapter 1 exercise. Did you do it?
I did. Yeah.
Bananas. I did not think it was gonna work.
Mm-hmm.
Because my drawing, I realized, became anatomical.
Mm-hmm.
See, I was like, oh.
That's okay.
But oh my gosh, I just kept going with the experience, and I realized that and I mean, it's 100% just because I'm so like body scans is like a regular part of my day, yoga is a regular part of my day, so like tuning into these things, whatever, like the self-awareness. But so shoulder and legs, that's where I feel tension, which when I assign the emotion to it is avoidance, which I then identified as the freeze response. I'm like locking up completely, and I sit like crisscross applesauce in this chair like most of the day. So it's like the 2 contact point, like a compressing myself in, and then my gut and my chest, like my heart space, is where I feel awareness and relaxation, but I also feel restriction and guilt there. And as soon as I stop restricting that area and I allow I have the awareness kick in, that's when I experience relaxation. Otherwise, my gut, nothing's happening in my belly until I start breathing. And I'm not purposely aware of the belly breathing starting.
Yeah.
It just starts happening. And then I experience the relaxation because like I'm folding in on myself.
Mm.
Crazy. And then when the part came up where I was like, what does your system need? I said permission. So I'm realizing this sounds like a fever dream to anyone that it doesn't know what the assignment is.
Mm-hmm.
But basically, I have opposites happening here: tension and grounding, awareness and relaxation. So guilt and safety, hyper awareness, hyper vigilance, and feeling restful. So what I learned from this is that what my parts need is permission to interact with each other and all exist at the same time. So dialectical perspectives. And then of course it came back to having gratitude, which is my like lesson of the year. So I was like, wow, Schwartz knows what they're doing because through that like I wasn't thinking about anything. I was just trying to figure out what my parts were, thinking I was doing the whole activity wrong. And then it gets to the last thing and it comes back to my overarching like problem area. Nuts. I'm done.
For those of us who are not familiar with this practice, like Jen said, it is chapter 1. Maybe chapter 1? Yeah, chapter
Right
1.
at the end.
And it is an opportunity to begin to do some of like the work that it's talking about. So it gives you a little bit of a background about what's happening. And it talks about, I think, a lot of things that a lot of people experience. And I think what Jen was describing was the unblending of parts. So that experience of those added layers of feeling of like guilt, and then the dichotomy of the opposite being, you know, presence and openness, and this like different type of energy tells me that like self was there, self was entering the chat, and there was a blending happening with the self and the parts that created those occurrences of discomfort and compression and like tension in your body. And that can happen throughout the day, especially when we're not, and not to say like we're not going inward all of the time, that would be crazy bonk. But when we give ourselves the space every day, even like once a day, to check in, then we can notice like, oh my God, like my shoulders are so tense. Like, oh my goodness, like my lower back is feeling this. And then when we offer ourselves something, whether it be sitting with those parts, a somatic type of movement to help release some of those things, like just, you know, whatever it helps you get into those places, like Jen said, it can open up the space for like the parts to unblend. And then we can notice what's going on, what's happening here. And like everyone's first time might look different. For Jen, like being that she is a practitioner and has like a existing practice with like gratitude and whatnot, I think it can be easier to slip into those socks. Whereas if we're not used to wearing them, it can be really uncomfortable and weird, and like it can
was
feel
even
like
uncomfortable and weird for me. And
yeah.
I'm always thinking like, where do I feel this in my body? And like having to be the self thinking through all of it. It was very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
To try to allow all of it to happen, like be there together, especially because like in this exercise, it's called mapping your parts. So you're trying to follow where all these feelings are, and then you're also trying to navigate like what each thing means, what it represents to you.
Yeah.
And really writing it down is super important. You can't just think about this, because it took me so many times of like going back to my drawing, my reference of where I'm feeling what each thing means and how they interact with each other.
Yeah. And the thing I like to let clients know, or like people know when they're doing this kind of work, slow is fast. Mapping your whole system can be really overwhelming. It's a lot of things that you've not interacted with. You might not even be able to get to the space to even do all of that. But I agree with Jen that the component of externalizing, giving space between to like write things down if you need to, or verbalize them if you're working with a therapist or someone in that nature, like that can be really helpful just to like say it, what's going on internally. I did the other exercise from this. I didn't do the mapping parts one yet because I was going to do something artsy with it. So I did the getting to know your protector.
What page is that?
That's on page 23. So there's 2 practices in chapter 1. And the first one is getting to know your protector. And I think I wrote it down. So let me grab my journal really quick.
I missed this one. I must have been reading. I was like, oh, I'll get to this later. And totally forgot.
What was that?
I totally forgot. Like, I didn't know this one was here.
Yeah. So now we both have something that we can go back into separately.
Ooh, fun. And compare notes.
Yeah. So I wrote while I was doing this. It was very helpful for me to like go into a like laying down on my back position, like letting myself rest and notice. And I felt heaviness in my neck, in my throat, and in the top of my chest when I went inward. And that for me was pain. It was like, it very much felt like suffering. It felt like holding. It felt like something that was not heard. Like it just felt like this space was holding so much pain and suffering and keeping it in because there wasn't space for it to go. So it had to be held within this vessel, because if you don't feel it, you don't get through it. It stays, like your energetic body holds on to these things. So that's where mine was like manifesting. And it asks like, what would happen if it wasn't doing this job? So these are the questions you might sit with when you notice, because for me, I knew it was a part because it didn't feel like my energy. It felt very much like an energetic emotional center. Like there's just a difference in like emotional feeling versus like how your body kind of exists without that energy being present, like the unblending and the space of that presence and openness and like.
Yeah. Wait, I'm just going to pause you real quick because that is like the best way I've ever heard someone describe how to be aware of where the emotions are in your body. It doesn't feel like you. If it doesn't feel like it's yours, like it doesn't belong, that's where you want to zoom in.
Yeah, because and that's the component of that self energy. So our boy Schwartz talks about self and what that feels like, and we all have it. And I think of it as that part that's like trying, like that part of you that when you hear it, it feels like you, like it's your voice. It's not parts that are kind of interjecting or like making, coming up with these different things. It's like a you. It's like, no, that's me. And we can grow that. It's always there, but we can open up space for it and invite it in. But yeah, so this was a protector part for me. And what I came to is that I needed to give this part attention. I needed to hold space for it, to allow it to unburden the pain and the suffering. And, show it appreciation for holding on to that heaviness and keeping me safe and, doing what it had to do. But yeah, the part was afraid that if it didn't do that job, that I would die. So it's like, if this isn't done, like if this isn't held in, that would just become everything. It would like think of like black paint being thrown onto a canvas. It covers everything. So this is a great practice. I like to do it part by part. That feels digestible for me. I do that in a clinical setting. Mapping parts, I think, is important because they work together. So taking the time to really allow yourself to do that. There's some really great like art exercises online that can be done in conjunction with the book, with the meditation practices in that book. So that's what I'm going to use to try and like really flesh it out. But I think I'm just going to start doing it like in a journal, It doesn't have to be that intense, just writing down what comes up.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Ooh,
love
so
that.
cool.
Yeah.
This could be like a mini series book club because this was 15 minutes. It also could be the start of today because it really is about getting curious and getting comfortable being with yourself. And I think that's what we were doing.
Mm-hmm.
So
cool.
Yeah.
Should we pause there so we have like a nice like recording for that 15 minutes?
Yeah.
Let me put my journal back and I'm gonna open up our episode planning.
Nice.
Now we're good to go.
The audioing.
The audio is doing the audioing. All right, so good morning.
Good morning.
I know we just chatted for quite a bit. We just kind of talked about IFS, but I think this was like a really good warm up to ease us into the content for this conversation. Jen, would you like to let us all know?
I'd love to.
Great.
So today we're going to be talking about a field guide to welcoming the awareness of who we are and allowing stillness and curiosity with who we are.
Yeah. So that's a lot of beautiful words.
Well, what does it mean?
Yeah. Could you elaborate a little bit about like what that means for us?
Yeah. So in Western society, in the United States, the Northeast specifically, there is so much pressure on rising to the occasion. And what's the occasion, right? It's getting a job, getting a family, having kids, all of these things are just like told to us that like we have to be this person, we have to be this way. Yeah. And when we notice parts of ourselves that are veering off of this path, we don't want to pay attention to it. We don't want to see it. There's stigma around being other. So today we thought it'd be really cool to slow down and be aware of, I don't feel I belong here. I feel other outside of not belonging here.
Yeah.
What does that mean? Right? Sitting with that feeling, because that allows us to know, oh, I don't belong here because I belong over here with these people doing these fabulous things.
Yeah.
So in order to meet yourself, you have to face the parts of yourself that you're scared of. So be still with yourself, allow your experiences to happen emotionally, cognitively, be curious about it. So don't just scrutinize yourself.
Yeah.
Ask about it, right? Be like, oh, trying to think of an example. Last time I scrutinized myself, shouldn't be too hard.
Yeah, Jen.
Self-deprecating joke number 1 of the day.
Well, I think separately from an example, when we were talking about this before, like weeks ago, you had started to outline how you work with this in sessions or, in your work with yourself. And the first part of this is openness. So forget the awareness, the curiosity, the stillness.
Yeah.
Let's start with, the openness to the prospect of even the idea of being with yourself.
Yes. Roni, thank you for centering me in that.
Yeah.
So now I have an example that can come to mind.
Yeah.
That moment when you realize, oh, I definitely was not as kind as I could have been. A lot of times we recognize that and we have a whole bunch of alarm bells going off telling us to run away from that realization, move on from it, pretend it didn't happen. So what if you were open to that thought?
Yeah.
That leads to what I often say is step number 1 in therapy is awareness.
Yeah.
Because once you're aware of it, that means that you have acknowledged that existed. I was not nice.
Yeah.
The number 3 because number 1 is actually openness.
Yeah.
Then number 2 is awareness. Number 3 is being curious.
Yeah. And that's the curiosity about, what are these things telling me? What is this experience telling me?
Mm-hmm.
What was happening before, during, and after, I think, is a nice one to kind of frame your day before the thing.
Yeah, like why was I mean?
Yeah.
Right? What happened? What caused me to have such a nasty reaction to someone?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then what's next? What do I need to navigate this differently the next time I have to confront being in a situation where I think I'm being mean? How can I get through it more effectively?
And this, my friends, is your field guide. This is what is going to help you as you are mapping out this experience. It's going to take you to places that you need to go.
Mm-hmm.
If you're willing to follow your guide, which is that felt sense, this experience, like this whole journey is welcoming that relationship to start to like unfold and develop and deepen.
Yeah, like Roni was saying before with IFS, their beacon that something is wrong, there's emotional discomfort, it's right in your heart, right in your chest, right? So it's being aware of when the light is going off and where is it pointing me.
Yeah. Yeah. So important.
Illuminating our shadow selves, if you will.
Yes. And like what's a shadow self?
Oh gosh.
My Jungian friend.
I actually hate this question because I truly believe that the only answer to it is the parts of ourselves we don't let ourselves see. Now, I know that there's like shadow work journaling and there's much longer, lengthy examples, like in descriptions, that we can base it off of. But I think the most digestible way of understanding it is the front of me is the light side of the moon. The sun is shining on it. It's bright. There's things that are interesting. It's the curated version. And then the dark side, which we all know is exactly the same, right? But the dark side is the part that we're hiding. We're keeping it behind our backs, hidden, because we're ashamed of it. So it's the source of our shame.
Yeah. And for those of you who have experienced shame, it can be described different ways. How I would say I could describe it in some words is like, it's like a second skin you can't shake off. It's like a kind of feeling. It's like heavy, wet, even. Like it could be a lot of these. Like, you might describe it differently for all of us. It might be sharp for some people. It might feel like a weight on our chest. It might feel like the urge to hide, make ourselves small, make ourselves packageable, make ourselves digestible, ? Insert protective measures. Here comes the bright side of the sun, the parts of me that I'm willing to show, the parts I'm so proud of. And then insert my avoidance of that dark side, that shadow self. Yeah.
So what's really hard is, again, we're taught to be this digestible American citizen that we were. And listen, America's got its problems. I'm proud to be an American still. With that being said, there has been a lot of expectations and what is typical placed onto us, and we're like that Gen Z millennial age group. So like having to say, I have this going on. So everything, basically what I'm trying to say is everything is stigmatized. And I also want to, so step one, that openness, I want to invite all of you who are listening to be open to self-scrutiny.
Yeah.
Why would we want to be open to self-scrutiny? That sounds really painful.
I mean, well, I think the openness to self-scrutiny, if we just notice it, we become aware of it, it allows us insight into deeper things. So like the experience can be painful, because of the scrutinizing. The scrutinizing is painful. But if we can notice all of that happening, if we can notice the scrutiny, what the words being said are, what the feelings being felt are, where it's showing up, how it makes us emotionally respond, how it makes us feel, like these are separate things. There's the emotion and there's the feeling experience of the emotion. That feeling experience is important. What I like to talk to people about is our perspective frames the picture. So if I think of being like someone with a camera, we look around, we're trying to find the light, we're trying to find the right angle. But when I'm capturing this heavy, dark, scrutinized version of myself and I'm looking at myself through that lens, whew, does that frame my experience? Does that frame how it feels? Because of course, if I'm saying, oh my God, you should know better, you should be doing differently, you should have known, shoulds hurt. Shoulds don't feel too good. It feels like you are missing the mark. If I'm able to, yes.
Sorry.
No, bring it in.
I love that you were like framing it like a picture, right? It really is like just one snapshot. And so we see there's self-scrutiny over there, or we feel it within ourselves. You have that thought. And we're like, nope, not doing that, not revisiting that. It's just a snapshot. What happens if you actually, oh my gosh, like Harry Potter, if it was a moving picture, if you could see more to it, what would happen? So that's being curious.
Yeah. One place.
Go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say one place I've really, really noticed this is in my physical practice with yoga. And I know I come back to that because I'm so able to witness the thoughts that are happening in motion. So I see myself in the past, because it's really shifted drastically, being either out of myself, removing myself from the experience, or really being mean to myself throughout of it, trying to like, oh my goodness, like it should look like this or that, whatever. And then when I shifted into the feeling, going inwards and feeling how it feels in my body and changing, like, what do I need? I needed to change my language, which worked for me because I worked over time to address the feelings and what was coming up and how it was making me interact with the world, etc. And I'm able to shift that language. So a long-winded answer of why would I want to sit with that, I forget what the word was because my brain. Scrutiny. It's like shrewdery, shrewd. Scrutiny. So scrutiny. Why would I sit with that? Because it's going to tell you something.
Mm-hmm. Yes. I'm like, mm-hmm. Because that's exactly what it is. The negative perceptions we have of ourselves, they exist for a reason.
Yeah.
It's either coming from an external source that we don't think is valid, or it's a guiding compass, again, that beacon, that light telling us you're acting out of accordance with who you want to be as a person. Let's sit with that. Let's see it. And again, if you don't allow yourself to see it, you're going to go down that shame spiral, or you're going to not be growing as a person. You're avoiding the stuck points as they come up. And if you're avoiding them, you're going to be sitting with them. So, I found a really cool quote, and then we put it through AI to make it less quotey, because this is from a professor at UConn, a philosophy professor. And oh my gosh, I would love to be sitting in that classroom. However, I'm not going to pretend that it was me who was so lyrically inclined and putting words together.
But I will say that having listened to Jenn's titrated version from her own mouth, it was a great synopsis and just as lyrically enjoyable. So
Thank you.
Now Jenn's giggling.
So this is a professional from the world of philosophy, their perspective on how to learn how to be with who you are as a person. And he, for reference, is speaking to 18 to 22-year-olds.
Yeah.
So he says, even with all the messiness and chaos around, there is so much potential for self-discovery and growth. You can look back on what didn't go well and figure out what you can learn from it. And when something goes really well, you can use that experience to build on and do more of it. It's all part of learning about yourself and shaping who you are. Self-awareness, personal growth, and even that self-scrutiny can all happen in a messy and unpredictable way, but that's life. That's the journey that we're on. If it wasn't messy, if it wasn't chaotic and unpredictable, it wouldn't be life. It wouldn't be our natural flow of experiencing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mic drop. So basically, don't be scared of yourself, is what we're trying to say. Even if you have an intrusive thought like, I'm a serial killer, face that. Think about it, digest it. We're going to scrap this one. That was way too extreme of an example.
Well, even if that is the thought that you're having, I would think about, you know, we have different kinds of thoughts that come up in our day today. You know, I was going to go with an example, but I'm like, this feels like an OCD counseling session and we don't need that.
No, it went way too deep of a thought. It was way too far.
What we'll do is we'll end it right when you ended that quote because it was very good.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Okay. So where we want to go next, we're 15 minutes in.
Okay.
So we're at 30 minutes.
Beautiful.
So where we want to go next is to appreciate okay, your part. So with that being said, like as we go through life, we're not. So maybe you can. Do you have a transition you can think of to go into the sweeter, more loving side of past selves, like of the versions of ourselves?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So I'll read the last sentence so it feels more natural for you. Does that work?
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Self-awareness, personal growth, and even that self-scrutiny can all happen in a messy and unpredictable way, but it's all part of life. It's part of the journey that we're on.
Yes. So I think what's really important about this quote is the fact that it's like not self-scrutiny by itself. It's not self-awareness by itself. Because we can be very aware and still be stagnant, still not know what our next move is going to be, not know how to get into our internal world. We could be very in our brain and very much not in our body through these experiences. So the self-scrutiny component, they are two parts of the same side, as in I think they both exist within each other. So self-awareness, you need that to notice that scrutiny happening and like how it's impacting you, because we are aware of the scrutiny. I don't think you need to have a lot of self-awareness to be aware of that scrutiny happening. It's a felt sensation. It's like an experience. And what this made me think of is kind of this experience of lamenting toward our past self or scrutinizing our past self. In both of those, I think what lacks is awareness, is some perspective shifting. Because if I am lamenting for a past self, wanting to go back to that time period, or, you know, thinking how wonderful this version of myself was, or just like really rose tinted glassing that version of myself, it can remove me from the current present, because right now might not feel good. So I might be lamenting on the past. So I need perspective to remember the complexity of life at that point. I think there's also that can happen in a future sense. So when we're looking toward a future version of ourselves, who we think we ought to be, who we're aspiring to be, what we're trying to shape ourselves maybe into, maybe we don't want to, maybe we're afraid of that as well. So I think it's like, these are all very complex things. But if what some of our motivation is being with ourselves, is learning, is wanting to be curious about how that experience informs me now. So like that past version of myself that was really scrutinizing themselves physically and how they showed up in the world, what they looked like external. I think there's a lot of external pressure, and I think there's a lot of internal pressure to show up a certain way. So like kind of shifting things around when you're, masking, I think is a good word for it. Heavily influenced by those things. Thinking about, oh my God, how did I feel in that time? Like, did I feel like myself? Did I, like, what do I remember from that experience? And how has that changed me currently? And I think those gentle reminders of that scrutinizing, of that experience, it can inform how we want to move differently. So, like, with compassion, with curiosity, like you said, how can I appreciate past and future? So, like, respect it. Like, we don't know what the future is going to be. We don't know how long we have, et cetera, et cetera. We can't go back. So, like, how can I learn from these things and, like, look forward maybe to this and be in the now?
Thank you. Yeah,
Yeah.
great job sharing that. It's a really hard concept to wrap our minds around, like past, present, future, and the moment where we get frozen with the shame or the fear of remembering a time where we did something that was really out of alignment with ourselves. It can, like, ruin an entire day. And what Ronnie is saying is this is the signal to remember, I don't have to like that version of me. I don't have to like those choices. I can also be understanding of where that came from and use it as a way to inform who I want to be now and look forward to who I can grow into.
Yeah, like the shift from self-loathing and disgusted kind of feelings into both what I would say are curiosity and excitement for who I will be. It's like joy. It's like, so, like, life things are hard and heavy, and, like, I will say that that's there a lot, but when I'm able to sit and be like, wow, like, I like who I am, I like who I'm becoming, I like who I was. Like, there's things I didn't like that I did, but again, those contextual like experiences that we all have, the things that shape our lives, the decisions that inform us. Some of us learn by doing.
Yeah, a lot of us learn by doing.
How else, like yes, we can learn from other people's experiences, but, like,
not everyone has that privilege of having family members who can be so informative.
exactly. Or even, like, helpful. Because, like, I feel like there is a watering down of issues at many different stages of life. Like, people get so saturated in their own stuff that it like exhausts their compassion, I think, for other people and what it was like at those different periods of life, because life is hard all of the time. It's hard to be a kid, it's hard to be a teen, it's hard to be an adult, it's hard to be in your midlife, it's hard to be nearing retirement, it's hard to be nearing, like, these are all different periods of time with different experiences, context, learning, like.
Yeah. And also, I want to invite everyone to, with this perspective taking, zoom out and look at what your life might be. Of course, you're not going to like past versions of yourself. Of course, you might have questions about what you did. That means that you were growing.
Yeah. Like,
you can accept those parts too. Just because there's things that you don't align with, you can be like, wow, practice gratitude. I'm so thankful that I paid attention to myself at that time and realized that I was not content engaging in these behaviors or being in that space or denying myself access to things that made me feel whole.
I think there's also space, like, what always made me feel better was reminding myself that I did the best I could at the moment. One of my favorite quotes, which I've probably already said and I'll continue to bring up, is doing the best you can until you know better. My Angelou. Angelou. I don't know. M.A. So that's one of the quotes I really like. And I think I apply that to the lens when I look back at myself, because I'm like, I know better now. So I would do differently. But I was doing the best I could in that moment with what I had available to me.
Yeah.
You know, like, and time allows this, space allows this, reflection allows this. And oftentimes what prompted that compassionate turn of heart was a scrutinizing voice that I noticed. And I was like, no, I do not subscribe to that. That is not like, that's not fair to, and like, again, that's showing that you've grown, you've learned, you've changed, you're a different version of yourself. My first therapist, I remember them saying to me at some point during one of our first many sessions that they had gotten to a point when they had like fumbled or did something that they was out of their alignment or out of tune with what they wanted to be doing, just something that just was like, that's opposite of what I've been asking for. They got excited for the opportunity to lean in and learn about it. Like, they're like, I actually look forward to those things now because it gives me the opportunity to learn about myself.
Yes.
And I'm like, wow, like, and I didn't, at the time I was very early on in my own therapeutic journey as an individual receiving that treatment. And I can say now, give me a second to do the math. I think it's like 6 years later, I am able to say like, oh yeah, that checks.
That checks out.
That checks out. Like, what a fuck, like, how, I'm sorry, like, how fucking cool is it to be able to like, to be excited about those things? Like last night I was like, oh my God, I have homework to do tomorrow. Oh my God, this, that, and the other. And then I was like, wait, like, Roni, you get to learn about the stuff that you really want to learn about right now. Like, how exciting. Like, we want to be learning about this. Like, yes, there's homework that's stressful, but like, wow. Like, and gratitude again enters the chat. So Jenn, I'm swinging it back over to you.
Yeah. So this leads us to the next point of giving yourself the gift of loving yourself in the moment that you're in right now. I love this whole idea because when we really, again, I'm not inviting you to zoom out here and look at humanity as a whole, every single person on this earth right now, babies being born in this moment, people passing away and hopefully leaving their knowledge written somewhere to their loved ones. We're all born with the task of self-realization, which then leads to self-actualization. Yeah. So once we realize who we are, we're able to put it into practice and be in like alignment with the highest version of ourselves. Some people call that following the plan that God has set out for them. Just depends on how you were taught to view this idea of actualizing who you want to be and what feels right for you. But it's in our human nature to progress through life in order for us to feel healthy and whole. So we're all just trying to do our best. I need to start over. Fudge. Okay, so
it's okay.
I said it's in our nature to progress through life in order for us to feel healthy and whole. We're all just trying to do our best. And one way that we can continue this pursuit is by being curious about who we are. Again, in that curiosity, why didn't I like what happened? Why might I be feeling guilty about this? Because they're all signals. And it's a gift to give to yourself of, I love myself and I didn't like that. Why did it happen? Because I love me and that wasn't part of me. Right? So it's allowing yourself to be an observer in those moments as you're viewing things that don't align with you, because you've already established, by scrutinizing it, by not liking it, you've already established it's no longer part of you. You can release it, you can let it go. And that can help actually induce the curiosity and openness to it once you allow it to be separate.
And I think if we're looking at this through like an IFS lens, it's a little different in that like these parts are part of our internal network. And while they are operating in ways that are questionable, they have a reason that they're doing that. So instead of, we're not turning away from them, because that's what we've already been doing. Like there's exiles, which are these little wounded beings that have been locked away and shoved down and like repressed because they're holding on to something really heavy. And these protectors are the ones that are like the line of defense. And so these parts operate in ways that might feel the opposite of what we want as self, as the person who's like wanting to drive the bus, but they're like parts that think they have to drive the bus. So they like automatically kind of like happen. And when the curiosity can enter the chat and we notice, oh, there's anger here, can we ask that anger to step out of the room? Can we sit with that part that is left if anger does leave the room? Because that anger is protecting us. That's like a different part. Can we be with the part that we are, the scrutiny, that critic? Can we be with that part? Can we begin to understand its role? How do you help me? What would happen if you stopped helping me? If you didn't do this? What are we afraid of happening if this didn't happen? So like this critic might be, they're proactive. So they're trying to prevent things from happening. So by critiquing you, it's like, well, what does that prevent? That could prevent me from feeling embarrassed. It can prevent me from feeling unworthy. It can prevent me from failing. It can prevent me from things that I want to do. It can prevent me from stepping outside of my comfort zone. It can prevent me from interacting with people that I really want to talk to. All to protect me.
Mm-hmm. Tied into past episodes, it can be a storyteller and give you all of these detailed warnings about why you should not be in an experience. And this is where IFS, why I'm really excited to be a learner in this process, is from the observer lens. I know how to, why did I just forget what I was going to say? Gosh darn it.
It's okay.
We're slipping. I'm slipping.
Time keeps on slipping into the future.
So, do you remember what you said?
So I had just finished saying how these parts are telling us, like they're able to communicate with us why they do what they do, what would happen if they didn't do it. And we can begin to get curious about that experience.
Okay, so the validity of those parts protecting us. So as the observer, I find that it's from the observer perspective, I think it's easier to assess, oh, well, I don't need this because. But from the IFS lens, it's more of this happened because, and I'm grateful this is here.
Yeah, like appreciation for that part trying to protect you, because regardless of what they're doing, they're trying to protect you. So like we're not condoning the actions of said parts or like what is happening, but we're understanding of the intended purpose. Yeah. And when we're able to observe and be curious about what's its job, what's its role, you'll often find that these parts don't actually want to be doing the job that they're assigned. Yeah. They would much prefer to be doing something else. Like that critic might want to be your biggest supporter. It might want to be like your biggest cheerleader. It might want to help you do things that you thought you could never do. But it doesn't get to do that because it still feels like it has to do this job.
My defensive self and my confident self are one and the same. Because I feel like my chest puffs up, my head is held higher. I just feel like I know what I'm doing. And when I'm defensive, I get my body language is the exact same. So it all serves a purpose. It's just being, we keep saying just because like in a way of relaxing into the understanding of what we're talking about, because this is really hard stuff. We're not just saying, let's just do it, right? Because it's not like
No,
that.
this takes so much time to like grow comfortable. Like I said with Jen, slow is fast. Slow is fast. So we go slow. We do it with a professional, or we do it in the space that we feel safe. Like, you know, all of this is tools to just try, be curious about, a lens to view yourself within. And I think when we don't cast these parts away and we actually realize that they're valuable and helpful and not bad, we can then integrate and work in a system that's working in a way that's more unified. Like these parts won't be as temperamental. They won't jump into the driver's seat as much.
It almost feels like wading through water that's up to your chest. And you're being very careful as you go through. You don't want your elbows to get wet because the water's cold, right? You're moving through something where there's obvious discomfort, but you need to take your time in order to get past it. You can't run underwater.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like one of those things, so like we don't even have to get that deep into it. Like we could dip our like pinky toe in and just like get a taste, you know, just notice.
I would love, before we end here, to give like an example that is like super relatable, digestible, anyone can try it on type of thing. So I'll use myself, as I tend to do. I was the DD at a wedding in the fall, and I'm a socially anxious person, and I don't like dancing. I had one person tell me my dancing looked funny at a concert, and I had no clue that I was being funny, and it just like threw me off. I was literally a teenager when this happened, and I still get like self-conscious about it, and it's just easier to have a couple drinks in me before I start dancing. So as the DD, I told myself I'm going to act like I would act at any other social function if I had a couple of drinks in me. I'm going to talk to everyone. I'm going to dance. I'm going to have a really good time and see what it's like to be present, to not give judgment from others a second thought. So, it was a really life-changing experience because I allowed myself to be brave in those moments. And let's see, wait. Okay, so I chose to be really brave, and I said like, oh yeah, this is like super digestible. Anyone can try it. Put yourself in a situation where the perceived danger, the perceived judgment, is going to feel as intense as maybe like a 4 out of 10. And I knew it was coming, but I chose to do this in a place where it was mostly strangers, and the only people I knew were my family. I went in a whole like air guitar solo on the floor, right? Like I like really threw myself into the experience because I was choosing to say this self-scrutiny is holding me back from being who I can be. I'm going to push that limit, let myself shine through, and this is capital S for self, shine through, and then see if there's any scrutiny after the experience. There wasn't. I was really proud of myself, and I've been able to just like dance in public and be more confident in general since then. So how can you challenge yourself? How can you be open to something that you previously only had a little snapshot that screams fear to?
Are you asking me or the world?
The world. But to help you get started, Roni's gonna lead us on a fun guided imagery meditation to help us encapsulate who we are in this very present moment and how we can relate to the world around us.
So what we're going to do is, wherever you are, I invite you to find somewhere to focus your eyes if you'd like to keep them open, maybe looking down, maybe finding a drishti point, somewhere for your gaze to land and stay, maybe closing your eyes if that helps you. Wherever you are, I want you to think of a color. Any color, it's bright, it's beautiful, it's radiant energy. And when you settle on this color, I want you to imagine a beautiful orb of light above your head. Just taking a moment, maybe taking a breath in through your nose and exhaling out of your mouth. And just appreciating the vibrant color as it floats above your head. And slowly, as it starts to move down, it starts to settle into your head, kind of making its way into your body. And as it does so, it begins to relax the space that it's touching. So you might notice your face, muscles starting to release. You might notice the space behind your eyelids relaxing. And it begins to make its way down to your throat, coming down your shoulders like a waterfall down your back. Everywhere it touches, releasing tension. And this is healing energy from the earth. So as it's cycling through your body right now, moving down your arms, your torso, it's taking that energy that you want to release with it. So allow yourself to release any energy as it goes through, cleansing that area. Maybe it's a little lighter. This starts to shift down towards your pelvic area. Maybe you rock your hips just to settle a little, allow that energy to move. Starts making its way down your thighs, your knees, your calves, into your feet, and out your toes, into the earth beneath you, through the floor, through any kind of things that might be separating you from the physical earth, making its way down. And as you breathe here, allow this energy, this light, to cycle through you, releasing anything into the earth, and it will be used as fertilizer for the plants, trees, the earth, and for you as well, and recycled and made new. So as you're breathing here, imagine that cycle of energy moving from the top of your head through down to your feet into the earth. And whenever you're ready, when you're feeling complete, you can make your way back.
Whew. Yay. So if you're wondering, that's how you sit with yourself in stillness. Meditating doesn't have to be
It can be. It can be.
100%.
But it doesn't have to be.
No, it doesn't. And it can be really scary to have these moments alone with yourself.
Yeah.
Having some guidance through it can be super helpful.
Absolutely. Yeah. Is there anything else you wanted to add to this conversation?
Yeah. I know we've given you challenges, things to think about. I think what's most important is that it's okay to have weaknesses.
Mm.
They're just as meaningful and important and worthy as your strengths. We're taught that it's horrible to have things that we're not good at. What does it actually mean? That signal is that you have humility. And once you have that humility to be able to see yourself wholly, the full picture, all the parts of who you are, that's how you're able to meet yourself. Honor who you are. Give yourself the gift of knowing and loving who you are. And enjoy the life that you've lived, that you have now, and that you're building.
Yeah. And I want to add to that like we don't constantly have to be taking ourselves apart. Like, this work isn't meant to be constant, because that is scrutiny if we're constantly assessing every single action. Like, acceptance and being with all of you, radically accepting who you are in this moment, not always changing ourselves. Can't we just notice? Just notice how we're experiencing this life.
Be open, be aware, be curious, and allow yourself to use those as insights to navigate your new directions and what you need.
Absolutely. So I think it's time for us to bid you farewell, my friends.
Join us next time as we dive deeper into the human experience. Until then, breathe, find balance, and know you're not alone on your journey.
Love this episode. Share it with a friend who wants to sit with themselves.
Ride those waves of awareness, baby.
Heck yeah.
Thanks for tuning in.
Stay mindful, stay present, and keep exploring that extraordinary world within. Until then, catch you on the trails.
Catch you on the trails. Cool. Okay. I'm going to stop.